being here at this conference with you together on a real stage now, real attendees, real speakers. Let's see about this, but yeah, it's so good being here in person, like Kaneko said. I guess we all missed it, and I see a lot of excited faces, so I'm pretty sure you are excited as I am. And for me also, this conference is quite special because I've been here since 2015, so 7 years ago, first time that I attended here in Amsterdam. And since then, I've been at every Laracon EU conference. So yeah, this really means a lot to me as well. And it's an honor for me opening this conference with you together. So thank you very much. But today I'm going to talk about myself a little bit. So my name is Christoph Rumpel. I'm a web developer from Vienna, Austria. I do a lot of PHP, Laravel, and everything I do, I share on Twitter. I do live streams, blog posts, podcasts. Yeah, so everything there is, I think you will find something from me there. And please, if you do any images of my talk, please tag me so that I can see them as well. This will be very nice for you. And if you have any questions or want to reach out to me, please use Twitter or my website. Today I want to talk about debugging with PhpStorm and Xdebug. And to start this off, who of you has already used Xdebug at least once? Okay, more than I thought. So I would say almost all. Okay, guess I can leave then? No. Who of you is using Xdebug regularly? Okay, that's far less. Okay, that's good. So maybe half of the audience, something like that. And yeah, so maybe I can show you something new today, and that's what I hope so. When we talk about debugging in general, with PHP, with Laravel, I see two main approaches. The first one, the famous one and only dump and die approach. I guess we all love it, and I feel like especially in the Laravel community, the dump and die approach is like religion, yeah. So, yeah, it's right, yeah. Everybody loves dump and die just because it's so easy, it's so convenient, and yeah, I'm also a fan of it, I have to admit it. But then there's also something different called step debugging, and that's what we want to talk today about. And yeah, that's quite different from the dump and die approach. So we are going to talk about Xdebug today, and in order to set it up, we need 3 things in place. And the first is the Xdebug PHP extension. So we need to have this on the server level installed. Then we have to make sure that we start a debugging session. There are a few ways we can do this. And then we also need to control the debugging session. And that's what PhpStorm is for. And I guess most of you know I'm a big fan of PhpStorm, so that's why I love to show you some more tricks here. Okay, I think enough of the slides. Let's do some live demo today. We're going to talk about this little demo application which I have, which is a little blog of mine where we see 5 articles here, 5 articles of mine. And there is a little bug here because this last one, which is called How I Accidentally Hit My Own Server with a DDoS Attack, which I really did. Yeah. Fun story for another time. This article shouldn't be shown here on the site because it isn't finished yet. And today our goal is to try to fix this little bug. All right, so we have here a very simple Laravel application. We have a home controller. We have here a method where we get all of our posts. Our posts are markdown files, which you can see here, and then we're going to send this to the view. And our markdown files have some information at the top, like the title, categories, summary, and also we have here this hidden field, which says here for this article which we're interested in, it's set to true. So we don't want to show it on the website, but still somehow it ends up there. So with a common dump and die approach, we usually would dump out here just the post and see what we get. Here we go, and then refresh the page, and then we see, okay, we have a collection, we will then debug further. But today we want to do something different. We want to use Xdebug. So I told you already, Xdebug is a PHP extension. It's built by Derek Rennick, who is very active in the PHP community for more than 10 years. So very big person in PHP. And yeah, he has created Xdebug, and it's like the debugger for PHP. And I told you that we have to get 3 things in place in order to use Xdebug. And first, we need to make sure that the extension is installed. And we can easily check this by checking the version of PHP, which I have 8.1.2. And I can also see the enabled PHP extension, and Xdebug is one of them. That's already the most trickiest part, so I've done this before, so that I don't have to show you how this is done here live. So that's the first thing. Okay, the second thing now is interesting because we need to tell our web server that we want to start a debugging session. And there are a few ways we can do this, and my favorite one is by using a browser extension called Xdebug helper. Xdebug is not only good for debugging, but also for profiling or for tracing, but we don't talk about this in this talk. We are interested in debugging, so that's why I set Xdebug to debugging in my browser extension. And what this now does here is we can easily check this out. Let's make this a little bit bigger here. If I run here another request, and we take a look at this one here, we can see under the request header, here at the end, I hope you can see this here, Xdebug session. Right here is now set inside the cookie, and this tells the web server that we want to start a new debugging session. Of course, we could also set up Xdebug to run all the time with every request, but mostly we don't want to do this because we want to be very specific about when we want to debug something. Okay, so that's the second thing we have in place. And now the third thing is PhpStorm. We need to control our debugging session. So that's what we do with PhpStorm, and under the settings, we have a few things we can set up. Under debug, you can see also some instruction on how to use Xdebug, but mostly interested for us is that we have set the right ports. 9000 and 9003 are being used by Xdebug, and that's how PhpStorm and Xdebug then are communicating. And also, we need to start listening for a new debugging session, which we can do here, but we can also do this under run and start listening for debug connection. Okay, that's the three things we have in place. So this means from now on we can use Xdebug. But yeah, if I do something now, nothing is going to happen because with Xdebug we have to work with a breakpoint. And I can set this here easily in PhpStorm on the side, just if I click here. And with a breakpoint, we are telling now the web server that we want to stop here at this exact line of code. Okay, let's see. Is this working? Fair enough, we've been sent to another display, but that's not the right one. Yeah, inside here we can now see that we have a new debug connection, and we have stopped here at this line of code. And this opens up here the debug window, where we have some new information about the current state of our application. So on the left, we have the so-called frames, which are kind of all the files the request ran through. And you can see there are quite a lot of them. So we've started here in the index.php file, and then a lot of files we've been through until we get to our home controller. And then on the right, we have now variables, information about the current state inside the home controller. So we have the object of the home controller. We have our cookie here. Here we can also see that we have the Xdebug session set through the browser extension. And we also have access to the environment files, to the server variables, some contents, and so on. So this gives us a lot of information about what is going to happen right now at this point where we have set our breakpoint. Okay, so now in order to debug, we need to make sure, what's inside the posts variable, like we did before with the dump and die. And at this point, we don't see this because if we set a breakpoint here at this line hasn't been executed yet. So this means in order to see what's inside the posts variable, we can set here another breakpoint, and then I could resume the program. That's what I can do, or I can also use some of the icons here, and the first one is stepping over. So stepping over the current line to the next line of executable code here inside this file. So this would be this one. So that's exactly what we're doing here. And now we have here the post variable, and we can try to debug this. And I can see this is a collection. It has 5 items here, 5 post objects. And the last one is which we're interested in, because that's the one we want to check out. And here we see that the hidden field is set to false. Okay, but we have set it to true, so this means somewhere in between where we set it in the markdown file till we get here must be our bug. Okay, so what's next? Let's get rid of our debugging session and think about what we would do next. So inside our post collector in the all method, it's quite simple here. We are getting all the markdown files here. Then we're making a new collection of those files. mapping over them to return post objects with the information from the meta information from the blog post. And then we're going to filtering the ones out which are hidden. So pretty straightforward. So what I would be next interested in, what do we get back here where we get the information of the markdown file? So maybe something is wrong here. I'm setting another breakpoint. Let's switch. Let's run the request again. And fair enough, here we are now at this point here where I can check the post meta for the first article. Because since we are in a loop inside the map method, the breakpoint now breaks at the first article. But we are interested in the last one, so this means I can resume the request until we are at the file which we are interested in, which is this one here. Yeah. And now on the meta array, I can see some fields again. The meta information here can see that hidden is set to true. That's exactly what we have set in the markdown file. So this means when we grab this information from the markdown file, it still works. So this means the issue must be somewhere in between. Okay, so what's next? Next, we are creating here some post objects here. So let's see what we're doing here. We're getting the post meta information, and then we are setting the title, the category, the content, and then also the hidden field. And here now I'm a little curious because it says now visibility here, but I think this isn't really a field that we have set. And if we check now our markdown files, we can see here we called this hidden. So this means this looks like this is our little issue here. Let's try this out. Let's refresh the page, and yeah, fair enough, now we only see the articles which we are really interested in. We could have also checked this now differently. Let me go back to our post collector, and let's set here another breakpoint. I'm going back here, so what we normally do a lot when we use the dump and die approach, that we are interested in what do we get back after the map method, what do we get after the filter method. So when we have chained methods, we want to check what's happening between those methods. And then mostly we end up with another dump and die like this, and so we can see what's happening after the map method. And we can do something very similar with Xdebug. So I can select here, this part here, the collect method and the map method, and I can do evaluate expression here. And this now copies the whole expression inside this field, and now I can evaluate this. And I can see here the result of this code. And this is super useful because now I can see here things like, here we have 5 items. Okay, that's exactly what we were interested in because we have 5 blog posts. But now we can also check what's happening after the filter method. So let's select this as well. Evaluate the expression, evaluate, and now we can see here we only have 4 items. So this would have also told me already that now the filtering method is working and that we now don't see the article which we don't want to show on our website. Okay, that's cool because we have successfully fixed our first bug with Xdebug. I have to admit it was quite a simple example, but at this point, we don't care because we are interested in what we can do and to start using Xdebug. And I hope that I could show you also already a few of the advantages when using Xdebug. And the first one, which I think is the biggest one, that we don't have to change our code at all. So we don't have to dump and die something here, var dump here, log something here. We didn't touch our code at all. We're just setting a breakpoint, and then we're checking the state of our application at this breakpoint, which I think is pretty cool because you don't end up forgetting any dump and dies, which I'm pretty sure all of us have already done, and that's not so much fun if you put them in production. Then we're also quite flexible because we're setting a breakpoint. We can move on from the breakpoint. We can see all the variables about this state of the application, which gives us a lot of information to debug our application. And then, yeah, there is even much more that I want to show you. I don't have time to show you everything, but there are a few things that I still want to show you. So let's go back to another live demo here. And if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of PhpStorm and shortcuts. So this means, of course, there are shortcuts here for setting a breakpoint, getting rid of breakpoints again. We can also, if one is set, use the context action in PhpStorm to edit the breakpoint. And here we have some more information, see if the breakpoint is enabled, if we want to stop at this breakpoint. This is what suspend execution means, because mostly we want to stop, but we don't have to stop at a breakpoint. We can also say we don't want to stop at a breakpoint, but we want to log something, and then move on with the request. So there are a lot of options which we have here. And sometimes we also end up setting like, maybe a lot of breakpoints here. So let's do this. And then what I can do is I can also open up the breakpoints window. And this now shows me all the breakpoints which I have set inside my application, because normally when we're debugging a really tricky issue, we're going to set multiple breakpoints, multiple files, and then we don't want to go in every file and then manually getting rid of the breakpoint, because we just want to get into this window and just deselecting them and removing them. But that's actually not it. We can also set breakpoints here directly from this window. And this is interesting because here we are not inside the code. We can say that we want to set a breakpoint on a specific line, but what we can do, for example, set a breakpoint for a specific method. And I think that's pretty cool, because in our example, we were checking out the post collector and the all method. And of course, every time in PhpStorm, I have auto-completion, which makes this very easy to handle. So I'm setting here a breakpoint for the specific method. And now if we get rid of this again and refresh the page, let me just close this here. You can see that we have now stopped at this specific method without us even have to go inside this method and set the breakpoint. And very similar to this, we can also do this for a specific exception. So if you want to check your application when an exception is being thrown, just set a new breakpoint for this exception, and then it stops there. And then you can check, okay, what's happening with my application before the exception is being catched, because then, of course, different stuff is happening. And actually, you're interested in the situation where the exception has been thrown directly. But one of my favorite features of using Xdebug with PhpStorm is this one here. So what I ended up doing a lot, and I mean really a lot, when I'm debugging something inside a loop, like this map method or each method, then mostly if we set here dump and die, we're going to break at the first execution of this loop. But maybe we're not interested in the first article, like in this case, we're interested in the second one or the third one. And then often we end up doing something like this. So if the specific information we have here, so I'm getting here the hidden field. If this is true, then I want to debug the post meta information, for example. And I've been doing this a lot, and I'm pretty sure you have done this as well. And I can do something very similar with Xdebug by setting a breakpoint. And I'm now going to edit this breakpoint, and I'm now adding a condition to this breakpoint. And this now is really nice, because I can just, with auto-completion, say I'm interested in the post meta variable. It knows it has this meta method. I'm interested in the hidden field. And if this is true, I only want to break at this point. You can only see that we have here now this question mark, which tells us that there is now a condition set. And if I refresh the page, we're going to stop at this breakpoint. But we can also see here directly that this is now not the first file. It's actually only the one where the hidden field is true. And this makes debugging very, very powerful and easy, because you can just directly go to the specific information which you're interested in, and you don't have to dump and die everything out and write those if conditions yourself. Okay, two more things that I got for you. Let's say we are interested in this filter method here, down here. And I'm setting another breakpoint. We're going to stop here. If I find PhpStorm again, here we go. Let's say mostly we're interested in the title of this current post variable. So normally I would go inside here and then check the title. But if I want to do this every time with every execution of this loop, I would always go in there. And sometimes also the information you're looking for is not inside the first object. You have to go into the first object, then maybe a second one and a third one, and you always have to click through the information that you actually want to see. But what I can do here is I can right-click here and add this to my watches. And what this now does is it adds now this information here at the top of my variables here in the variables window. And so this means if I move on with the request, I can see exactly now what the title is. So this makes debugging so much easier, because you just print out the information you need, and then you can directly move on from there without going through the browser or going here through all the objects directly to what you're exactly looking for. And there's one variation of that which I think is even better. I can right-click here on this post object, and I can add a so-called inline watch. And what this now does, it prints some information here right inside my IDE next to the line of code which I have set the breakpoint. And this now doesn't tell me too much, only that I have a post object with 4 items in it, but I can edit this to my needs, which I think is pretty amazing. I can say I'm interested now only in the title, and boom, I can see now the title right next to the breakpoint. And this is also something I think Marcel is also working on with Tinker, something very similar. So I'm very excited to see what he's doing, because yeah, I think that's pretty cool, because every time we now resume the request, we see directly the title of our post right inside our IDE. So I don't even have to look what's in my variables window. I can see right it here, and yeah, it gives you more information, and hopefully specifically this information that you want to use to debug your specific error. Okay, let's go back to the advantages. Yeah, I hope that I could show you even more that those advantages are still in place. We didn't have to change our code, not for setting a specific condition, not for setting that we only want to break for a specific method or exception. And yeah, our branch is still clean because we haven't touched this. And yeah, also with the inline watches and with the conditions, we are super flexible in how to debug our application, which makes it just so powerful, yeah, to use Xdebug. And one more thing which I really like about Xdebug, and also where I think it's a game changer to all the other tools which we have, is to debug what I call the unknown. Because if you use the dump and die approach, you often have to think about, where do I put my dump and die? Maybe sometimes you don't know if this method is being called or this class, and then you add up sprinkling all your dump and dies all over the place just to find out if this or this or this is being triggered. But with Xdebug, I can set a breakpoint maybe a little bit earlier inside my request, and then I say, let's move on from there. Next step, and I can exactly follow the request through the code which is actually being executed. And I don't use this for debugging, I also use this for checking out how a new application I'm working on works. Let's see how this specific information works, this method works, and I'm just following through the request. Or what I also have done a lot is by checking out a framework like Laravel. How is Laravel doing this or that? I'm just setting a breakpoint. I could set one breakpoint at the index file of Laravel and then check out every line of code which is going to be executed until I come to my home controller. And we've seen a lot of files are being executed here, and it's quite interesting to see how this all works. And yeah, I think Xdebug can help you here a lot to also better understand the frameworks or tools you are using. And yeah, I hope that today I could show you that Xdebug is a very interesting tool to check out. So if you haven't tried it yet, give it a try. It sometimes can be tricky to install it. I've been there. Many people here knows this. If something goes wrong, it could be a pain in the ass to debug setting up Xdebug, but in the end, if it is set up, it's very easy to use and very helpful. And I'm also not telling you to use Xdebug all the time, because yeah, I use dump and die approach myself, and sometimes I use Ray as well from Sparsty, which is also addition to the dump and die approach. So I think it's important to be aware that there are many tools out there, to know how they work. If you like them or not, give them a try, and then it's another tool in your belt and you can just use it if you need to. And for every debugging, I just decide, do I want to use a dump and die? Do I want to use Ray? Do I want to use Xdebug? I have a few tools I can choose from, and I think that's very powerful as a developer, knowing the options out there that can help you. I've also here a lot of resources, how to install it, how to use it. There are a lot of videos out there, how to use it with Laravel Sail, with Docker, and so on. So there are a lot of resources. So yeah, no excuse to give it a try. Also, if you're interested in learning more about Xdebug by myself, I also have a little video course which is called Mastering PhpStorm, where I also show you how to install Xdebug, use it in PhpStorm, use it with Laravel, and yeah, very similar today, I'm going to tell you how this is being used. And before I leave you off here, I have like 38 seconds, which is pretty exactly the time I think I will need. Also last week, Freke and I have released a new course, which is called Writing Readable PHP. We both are very excited about writing clean code, simple code, code that is easy to understand, but also easy to change, to test, or to maintain. not only now, but also in the future. And we both think that if you want to write better code, writing readable code will help you to get there. So please also give this a look. And with the 5 seconds I have left, thank you so much for coming, for opening up this conference with me, and yeah, enjoy the conference together. Thank you.
So, there's been some questions around Twitter. No. I got here one from an anonymous person asking, what's your theme color? That's a joke. No one asked that.
It's dark.
It's dark. But I got here one question from, I'm going to misspell your name, but I'm just, so it was Jake Combi. Hopefully I did not bash as much. So he's asking, when you create a breakpoint from the menu, can you fill it in the, can you use it an interface?
Sorry, what? Can I?
Read it.
When you create a breakpoint from the menu and fill in the fully qualified class name, can you also use, that's fully qualified.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't use
an interface.
I use DD.
Okay, I see. So if you can use the interface. Actually, I've never tried it. Let's try it afterwards and see, and I'm going to tweet about if it works.
Okay. So no way.
Sorry, Kaneko.
No, I'm good. I'm good. So, another applause for this mister.
Thank you.